Director of the German Marshall Fund Geostrategy North. Kristine, really good to have you back on the program. So we have spoken to Ukrainian representatives who have pointed out that the minerals that are to be extracted as part of this agreement, some of those minerals are located in areas that are occupied by Russia at the moment. Beyond what is on paper, how difficult will this agreement be to actually implement?
The agreement has two functions. There's a strategic symbolic function, which has an immediate impact for the prospect for peace, for an understanding of what is the relationship between the United States and Ukraine. And the second function of the deal is to set a groundwork for very complicated economic ties in the future. Complicated not because of the politics, but because of the logistics. Where there are existing mines for things like graphite, it could be faster to have extraction and business get up and going. But in areas that are disputed or areas that are not in Ukrainian hands, or in particular on challenging things like the rare earths in particular, which are so important to the United States right now, this is a many years long development project to have security in the areas where these mines can be, and then to do the work required to get a mine up and running. This is a long-term commitment, therefore, for a future economic relationship between Ukraine and the United States. And in many ways, the fact that this isn't something that is going to come to fruition tomorrow is a promise to Ukraine for the long-term backing of the United States. And here we get back to that first function of the symbolic role of this deal. And so many in Ukraine and around the world have been asking, what does it mean for the Trump administration to have been so rough with Ukraine? The prior moment for potentially signing a different version of this deal was 2 months ago, and the explosive Oval Office meeting between Zelensky and Trump.
And the point has been made as well, Kristine, that this is not a security guarantee, clearly. The Ukrainian representatives we've spoken to have said that. What will it then open the door to?
To greater happiness in Washington. And I think that is an incredibly important point. In the last few weeks, we've seen a greater alignment, certainly in the Vatican visit between Zelensky and Trump, more of an understanding between Ukraine and the United States. And for there to be discussion of future military assistance to Ukraine from the US, which is part of what these minerals could go feed into, that already feels like a dramatic step forward. Because in the last few weeks, it hasn't been perfectly clear what the future role of the US in Ukraine would be. Is the US a partner for Ukraine economically, but also militarily? So even having that military assistance line, it's not a security guarantee, but it is a discussion of a future military relationship between Ukraine and the United States. And that feels like a tremendous victory based on where we have been in the last few months.
And does this put Ukraine in a different position going into negotiations, possible negotiations with Russia?
Absolutely. What's very clear in this deal is that Russia is seen as the aggressor. The language in the deal, in the minerals deal, is quite normal. It feels as though the explanation of what has happened is an explanation that the Biden administration would have had, that the Europeans currently do have, in terms of who is responsible. And after the signing of the deal, Secretary Bessent also talked about the fact that those who have contributed to the Russian war machine, and Russian war machine is a quote, that they would not benefit from this. And that's also language in terms of the lack of benefit to those who have helped Russia benefit from recovery. But the discussion of a Russian war machine and the clear explanation of who is responsible in the war is also a victory, because it sets a narrative and it sets the history straight in terms of what happened. And that puts Ukraine in a far stronger position with this long-term economic partnership with the United States going into a peace deal.
Just about 30 seconds left, Kristine, but how do you think the Kremlin is seeing all of this?
I think the Kremlin is watching it very closely. The Kremlin also wants a good economic deal with the United States. And the question is, how willing are they to allow the US to have this deal with Ukraine? The Kremlin doesn't want a prosperous and free Ukraine in the long term, and to have American money and to have American assets, including economic assets, in Ukraine is against its interests. So I would assume that the Kremlin doesn't feel that great and probably would have preferred where they were a few weeks ago, with Ukraine seeing as the troublemaker for any potential peace process.
Kristine, thank you so much for your analysis tonight on BBC News. Appreciate your time.